Before the beginning of the Brian Michael Bendis era, I want to take a look at Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason's run on Superman Rebirth and go over some of its greatest hits. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is kind of a weekly one-shot where I'm going to be talking about Superman Rebirth, the run of Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason on the Superman stories, and I'm going to kind of hit the greatest hits of each individual story. So make sure you subscribe if you want to get more videos like these. The one I want to talk about first is Son of Superman, which is really our introduction to Jon Kent and the family life of Superman and Lois Lane. So this is a really interesting story with a lot of great hits, and there's a lot of really cool recaps from various other parts of Superman's history. But let's dive in and see what I'm talking about. When we talk about Superman Rebirth, arc number 1 had to do a lot of heavy lifting, and the Son of Superman was really the introduction into the Clark Kent family. But we open up the actual series with a retrospective by Clark Kent dealing with the former Clark, the New 52 Superman who has now passed away. So he stands there over his grave reflecting. We see this blue glow from his hand as he touches the ground, and it gives you an indication that this Superman, even though it's the Superman that we know, the Superman from before New 52, the Superman from Crisis, this is a very different person inside this universe. He may or may not be welcome, but the one thing that's going to hold true is that even without the Clark Kent from New 52, he is going to fly the colors of Superman as he takes off into the sky, and we see everything that's happened to him in his past. You know, fighting various robots, escaping from Krypton, the way that he was received by the Kents in Smallville, everything about that is explained in a single splash page. Of course, we do have the introduction of Jonathan Kent, and it's how he reflects and how he shows the adoration for his father. He's awoken by lightning as the barn is on fire, and what is his dad doing? He's in there saving the horses, pulling them out of the fire as his clothes burn away, revealing that Superman logo. He is just absolutely enamored with the fact that his dad is Superman. Of course, he doesn't necessarily realize exactly what's going on because he's out there roaming the fields with his cat, and he sees a hawk that's coming down, and it goes to grab Goldie, his mom's cat. Just the frustration of being a young person, a young child that doesn't necessarily have control over a lot of things and being emotionally driven. He just lets his heat vision run rampant, causing both the combustion of the hawk and the cat itself. And that's where we first see Kathy. Kathy, who would be a big key in the overall Superman Rebirth story arc from issue number 1 all the way through to the last one and possibly even into the future. This, of course, draws the attention of members of the Justice League. Batman and Wonder Woman come to meet up with Superman, and while they haven't really had any interactions at this point in time, there's not really a relationship between this new version of Superman and these older versions of New 52 Batman and Wonder Woman. They do understand one thing, and you see this kind of ominous turn as their eyes glow in the darkness as Jon is taking a look down at them. It seems sinister, it seems terrible, and then they see the imposing figure of Superman standing in his doorway, and you can't help but think that if I was a kid at this point in time, man, I would be so fucking scared of my dad if he was Superman and he was standing in the doorway, because he just cuts this imposing figure. And that was the real intention of the art, but we also get the indication that this is about something more than just the Son of Superman. This is about the Eradicator. We see him using his heat vision, blasting his father, blasting Superman and absolutely roasting him, but the confidence of Superman to really show his son exactly what to do, how to aim small, miss small, how to hone his powers is really shown off as he pulls open his jacket and we see the Superboy logo, the Superboy style for the first time as he focuses in and then helps his father succeed. But that's a real simple reveal. But the big thing that happens in issue 2 is the duality between the two different sides of Jonathan Kent. We see him interacting with Kathy. They're sitting on a tree branch, and as she puts her hand on his, he just grabs the branch out of instinct, this impulsive young kid, and just breaks the tree branch off, falling to the ground, breaking his arm. And that's where the biology of Superman and Lois Lane kind of come to a head. And that's going to lead us to the Fortress of Solitude, where we're going to see the Eradicator, who has finally reconstituted himself, and he is going to play a much larger part in this overall storyline. Once we bring Superman and family face to face with the Eradicator, we actually get the introduction in issue number 3 of Jorge Jimenez, which is now a mainstay on the Justice League title with Scott Snyder. So that is a really interesting thing. And he goes through everything about the Eradicator, gives him a little bit of backstory, and we see the Eradicators in service of Zod gathering up all the lawbreakers, putting them into the Phantom Zone, and giving us an indication as to what kind of motivations are behind the Eradicators. But right now, the motivation for the Eradicator is simply to expunge the human element from Jonathan Kent, leaving only the pure Kryptonian side, removing the corruption. Krypto is not going to have any of this. This super dog sacrifices itself, jumping in front of the Eradicator's beam and allowing itself to be absorbed into the system, which which just means that Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason really hate the Super Pets, or at least it seemed like they did for the first arc, because they killed off Lois's cat and they killed off Jon's dog. But of course, that only makes Jonathan Kent that much more furious. As the battle rages on between Superman and Eradicator, we see Jonathan suit up as he's been prodded on by his mom Lois to help support his father. He jumps in, and then all of a sudden they just smash Eradicator in the face, breaking him into pieces, loosing the souls of dead Kryptonians across the world. But that isn't something that can just be contained. It ends up in a bar where somebody's talking about a moon rock. It's actually a piece of Krypton that has made its way to Earth. Superman and Superboy are incapacitated. Lois reaches for it and tries to free these dead souls of Kryptonians, and they finally kind of coalesce. Superman has some sort of vision with Pa Kent, and the souls are free, or they're freeing themselves from the capture, the hold of the Eradicator, which has kind of drawn his power from these Kryptonians, but only for a moment as he tries to absorb all of them back into himself, becoming one again. Not being able to have this kind of conflict on Earth, Superman grabs Lois and Jonathan, throws them into a submarine, which seems to be a pretty interesting kind of concept, and flies them to the fucking moon. And they're inside this moon landing bat cave where Bruce has evidently been building some sort of secret base, only to have the Eradicator come in and start battling with Superman once again. Things seem relatively hopeless. Jonathan's not able to help out because his dad has been absorbed by the Eradicator, but that leaves one other defender, that is Lois Lane, and in one of the coolest moments inside this first series, we see Lois just smash Eradicator in the face using the Hellbat armor. Just inside this, you've got Iron Woman Lois Lane just crushing on Eradicator, and it's just fantastic. I love every single moment of it. It doesn't necessarily make sense, but I'm totally in with it. But Superman rallies the souls of the internally trapped Kryptonians, breaks out of Eradicator, basically bursting through his chest and his mouth, leaving him powerless, and then finally takes things to blows. The battle continues to rage across the moon, destroying almost the entirety of the lunar Batcave, and when they finally come to conflict, Superman sees that Krypto is going to be trying to break out of the Eradicator, so he puts out his arm, allows the dog to bite down onto him, and yanks him from the chest of the Eradicator, leaving Krypto there so that way Superman and his dog are fighting side by side. As he finally pulls the last piece of Krypton out of the Eradicator, he just gives one simple order to Krypto: sit. As the super dog kind of lays on his chest, that allows him to kind of head off and reclaim everything that he's really destroyed, or everything that's really gone awry on the moon, putting everything back in place, and then finally standing in front of the lunar lander and the American flag and the Earth, knowing that he's here to stay and that everything is right. And this is a vision that the world sees in its entirety. They reward him, of course, with the key to Metropolis. You see his fans talking about him on the television set, but the real key is that while Batman and Diana don't necessarily know this Superman, they don't necessarily know this Superboy, he is ready to introduce himself and to play nice with the rest of the world. So this is a coming out story for Superman, Superboy, and a real kind of introduction to what's going to become of those characters. And it's a great way to introduce everybody to Superman inside Superman Rebirth. So I did a really basic synopsis of everything regarding Superman Rebirth and exactly what happens in the Son of Superman. So I would definitely recommend you guys checking out the trade. There's a link down in the description, so make sure you go pick that up. But overall, the art from Doug Mahnke, Patrick Gleason, you've got Jorge Jimenez in there. The story is a very strong one to open up with, and it really gives us a great indication of exactly who Jonathan Kent is and what kind of struggles he's going to have as a boy, and it sets up a lot of plot points that carry themselves forward through Superman Rebirth. I hope you guys can see why I think that Superman Rebirth is one of the best series that started up with Rebirth, and it's kind of sad to see it go. But I want to know what you guys think too, so hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.